Clint Eastwood walked past a bustling city sidewalk, unnoticed like any other passerby. But when he stopped at a small art stall, picked up a painting, and met the young artist's eyes, everything changed. Sophie Carter wasn't just selling art, she was fighting for her life. And in true Clint Eastwood fashion, he didn't just buy a painting, he changed her future forever. The hospital room buzzed with fluorescent lights, casting a dull glow over stark white walls. Sophie Carter sat on the bed, hands clenched in her lap, bracing for the words she had heard before. "The treatment is working," Dr. Patel said, a flicker of hope in his voice. "But you'll need 2 more rounds of chemotherapy." Sophie didn't flinch. Pain, exhaustion, this was routine. But then he hesitated. "Without insurance, the next round will be considerable." Beside her, her mother's breath shook. Their savings were gone. The last treatments had drained them. And now, this. The drive home was silent. Her mother's grip on the wheel was tight, her father's reassurances hollow. That night, staring at the ceiling, Sophie made a decision. She wouldn't be a burden. If she couldn't change her fate, she would fight for it. Art had always been her refuge. Now, it had to be her salvation. For a week, she poured every ounce of energy into her paintings, pushing through exhaustion, knowing each brushstroke might bring her closer to survival. Her art stall stood in the heart of the city, a simple wooden table covered with canvases, a handwritten sign in front. People walked by. Some glanced, some admired, but none bought. A suited man read the sign, then disappeared into the crowd. Hours passed, no sales. The heat pressed down on her. Her hands trembled, but she gripped the table, refusing to give up. Then, an elderly couple approached. The woman traced the edge of a canvas, a desert sky painted in deep purples and gold. "How much for this one?" Sophie swallowed. "80. The woman nodded and handed her the money. For a moment, Sophie froze. Then, carefully, she wrapped the painting, hands shaking. Not from weakness, but something else. Hope. Maybe she was just a girl selling art on the street, but she was fighting, and something about him felt like an old Western movie stepping into reality. The quiet confidence, the way he carried himself, it was as if he had walked straight out of the past. He cleared his throat. "I paint because I have to," he said simply. "It's the only thing I can control right now." His voice was steady, firm. He didn't blink, just watched her, letting the silence settle between them. And in that quiet space, Sophie found herself speaking. She told him everything. The diagnosis, the countdown the doctors had given her, how painting wasn't just about making a living, but about reclaiming her life, stroke by stroke. When she finished, he didn't offer sympathy, no forced words of encouragement. He just nodded, as if he understood something deeper than words could express. Then, he reached for a painting. It was a black and white canvas, one of her favorites. A vast desert stretching into infinity, a lone cowboy's silhouette cutting through the horizon. The interplay of light and shadow had taken her weeks to perfect. The man studied it carefully, his gaze slow and deliberate. Then, finally, he nodded. "I'll take this one." Sophie barely reacted. She had been through this before, customers admiring her work, handing over money, walking away without a second thought. But before she could name a price, he did something that stopped her cold. He pulled out a checkbook. Sophie blinked. Who even used checks anymore? She watched as he uncapped his pen, his movements deliberate, like every action had meaning. The scratch of ink against paper filled the air. Then, with a calmness that felt almost surreal, he tore out the check and handed it to her. She took it carefully, her fingers barely gripping the paper. Her eyes dropped to the numbers. $200,000. Her breath hitched, her vision blurred at the edges. She blinked rapidly, convinced she was seeing things. But no, the numbers didn't change. Her hands started to shake. "This," she whispered, barely able to form words. "This can't be right." The man smirked slightly, tilting his hat back, revealing his full face. Sophie's heart stopped. Her father's favorite actor, the legend, the icon, the man whose films had been a staple of her childhood. His voice had narrated her father's late-night stories. His characters had been etched into the very fabric of her memories. And now, here he was, not just buying her art, but changing her life. She couldn't breathe. She started, shaking her head in disbelief. No, I can't accept this." Clint's gaze didn't waver. "It's not charity," he said. "It's a damn good painting." She felt like the ground was slipping beneath her. A hush had fallen over the street. People were starting to notice, the murmurs, the curious glances. Someone pulled out a phone, snapping a photo. But in that moment, none of it mattered. She looked at Clint again, really looked at him. And what she saw wasn't just a Hollywood star. It was a man who understood what it meant to fight for something, to hold on when the world told you to let go. For the first time in months, Sophie felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. And then, just as the weight of it all settled over her, something even crazier happened. Her eyes dropped back to the check. She had been too overwhelmed to process it fully the first time, but now, as she looked again, her stomach flipped. $500,000. Her breath stuttered. Her pulse roared in her ears. Her entire world tilted. "There must be some mistake," she murmured, voice cracking. She looked up at Clint, the cowboy in the worn leather jacket, the man who had spent the last few minutes flipping through her work like he had all the time in the world. But now, standing in the golden afternoon light, she truly saw him for the first time. The sharp blue eyes, the smirk, the quiet confidence of a man who had spent a lifetime refusing to be shaken by the world. Her breath hitched. Clint Eastwood. The realization hit her like a freight train. He watched her carefully, reading the shock on her face. Then, he smiled slightly. "No mistake, kid," he said, his voice steady. "Just keep painting." Her legs felt weak. She opened her mouth to say thank you, to ask why, to tell him she didn't deserve it, but the words refused to come, because nothing in her life had prepared her for this moment. And it wasn't over yet. At first, no one noticed. The world moved as it always did, fast, distracted, oblivious. Then, the first whisper. A teenager, earbuds in, stopped mid-step, his head tilting as he glanced at Clint. His eyes widened. "Wait," he murmured, his voice shaky but growing louder. "Is that Clint Eastwood?" A woman nearby turned, phone half raised. She squinted, glancing between Sophie's art stand and the man in the worn cowboy hat. Another whisper, then another, and suddenly, it happened. A whirlwind of movement, people stopping in their tracks, heads turning, conversations halting. Someone gasped, another snapped a picture, and in an instant the quiet afternoon erupted into a frenzy. "Oh my God, it's really him! Clint Eastwood is right here. Wait, he's buying a painting? What's going on?" Phones shot up in all directions. A group of college students rushed closer, their voices filled with disbelief. A businesswoman in heels nearly tripped, dragging her assistant along with her. And then, the tipping point. A man in a suit who had walked past Sophie's stand without so much as a glance, stopped and backtracked. "What's going on?" he asked, stepping forward. His eyes flickered from Clint to Sophie to the pile of paintings. Then, his gaze landed on the check still clutched in Sophie's trembling hands. His jaw dropped. "Wait," he blurted. He just bought a painting for $500,000. A woman nearby gasped, and that was it. People surged toward Sophie's stand. Their eyes darted between her and Clint, trying to make sense of what was happening. And then, the craziest thing happened. Someone reached for a painting. "I'll take this one," a man in a blue polo shouted, grabbing a cityscape and pulling out his wallet. Before Sophie could even process the sale, another hand shot up. "How much is this one?" a woman asked urgently, flipping through the remaining canvases. Within minutes, the paintings that had been ignored for days were disappearing, one by one. No questions, no haggling, just buying. A teenage girl pulled out her phone, turned to the camera, and whispered breathlessly, "You're not going to believe what just happened." She wasn't done yet.